Hey, good morning. Morning, everyone. Welcome to the episode 3 of AI Business Asia podcast. I'm your host, Liu Jiang. Today, I have quite a different speakers. I'm talking to a very different company than my past. Not so much about AI, although AI is a core topic, but I'm talking to something more lively, something more on the ground. So let me introduce Workmate. Workmate is a Singapore-based startup founded in 2015, providing what's called a workforce as a service platform. According to the manager director, they like to call it the Uber for the blue collar workers. Anyway, what's really interesting is this platform connects over 600,000, again, it's over 600,000 blue collar workers with over 800 clients. It has been recognized as one of the fastest growing, actually the fastest growing company in Singapore by Straits Time in 2022. Meanwhile, ranked as number 4 fastest growing company in the entire region by Financial Times. Financially very strong, raised over 30 million and acquired recently by Perso Holding, one of the largest HR company in the region. So lots of highlights, very interesting rise, but that's not the reason I'm having this podcast. Not the only reason, at least. What really caught my eye is managing director Andrew. So I always say the first thing I saw Andrew is his LinkedIn post. Built his first company back in tech company in 2009, and after long years in corporate life, had its highs and lows. As low as washing cars and selling fireworks in high school. Not sure if that's low, but it's pretty
Yeah,
pretty high. I would say. Depends on where the fireworks goes, but
exactly,
built his
exactly. It's
fashion
pretty high for me.
business. Yeah, exactly. Built his fashion business, sold it over, in 15 countries, and built another e-commerce company. Anyway, there's too much exciting stuff coming from Andrew, and therefore, it's my immense pleasure to introduce Andrew. Please unpack your journey as a founder, and there you go. Floor is yours. Just tell us about yourself.
Thank you so much, Leo. First off, thank you so much for having me on your show. It's such a pleasure to be connected with you on LinkedIn and get to know each other's journey. Yeah, I mean, in very short, my name is Andrew. I've been in tech space for the last 15 years, building companies. Before that, very traditional, immigrant parents in the Netherlands doing corporate stuff because that is what my parents wanted me to do. But I worked for like global firms like Deloitte and ING, and my last proper job was actually a sales trader at the dealing room of a bank. But then in 2009, I decided to quit my job and
Are you saying you're not doing a proper job now?
well, I mean,
Yeah,
it's sometimes difficult to explain, to family what I do, but
yeah.
I think you just need to create your own, destiny and future. And I've been dabbling in the internet space over the last 15 years, and
Yeah.
some with success and some with not so much success. But I'm enjoying myself.
What really caught my first attention is you said something about don't trust word, action matters. I
Yeah.
suppose for you, it has been a journey full of actions.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think the only way to learn is to do, right? And I'll tell you, in 2009, when I first started my e-commerce company, my first ever e-commerce company, I did that, of course, without knowing anything about the e-commerce space or without knowing anything about online marketing or without knowing anything about, understanding customer needs, et cetera, et cetera. But I launched this business without knowing anything, without having any track record. But I did like $40,000 within the first 24 hours after launch. So
Wow.
to me, it's more like we learn by doing.
What kind
And
of product are you selling?
I sold a pillow, actually, a pillow. So
Well, you
this is
sold
not very
40,000 worth of pillow in 24
this
hours.
is not this is not very a sexy story. But I launched it without having a lot of knowledge. But I launched it, and I think that's more the
Mm,
learning for myself. Is the only way
mm,
for us to learn, whether we're doing AI, whether we're doing like a super deep tech startup, or we're just selling pillows. It doesn't really matter.
mm,
The
mm,
only way for us to learn is by doing. And I think now with the tools we have right now, I think the probability of us succeeding in something is way better because we have so many more tools. You know,
mm,
I did
mm.
it. I did it, but just I just took a gamble, which in that case kind of worked out quite well.
Yeah,
But I think we live in an amazing time right now where there's so much tools, so many free tools out there
yeah,
to get more understanding of what
yeah.
clients want and what their problems are.
100%. So on that note, comparing to 10 years ago, jumping from the selling pillows, and you start a fashion brand, do you see yourself become more skillful in terms of using tools? And I mean, e-commerce
Yeah.
versus fashion is a quite different industry. I mean, do you see transversal
Yeah.
skills and transversal tools?
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, for me, entrepreneurs are just doers, right?
Yeah,
That's why I'm always a big believer of this whole concept of less words and more action.
yeah,
Um, but uh, but yeah, like I said, I think we live now in a time where, I mean, I launched my first ecom website with WordPress, and eventually we did stuff with Magento and pretty old school stuff, right? But now,
yeah,
if you look what's freely available, even like free platforms, free softwares, it's amazing, right? So I think the opportunity loss or opportunity cost that you
yeah,
have to launch something is so much more manageable than back then.
100%.
Look, I quit my banking job
Yeah,
to sell pillows from my living room, which is not very
yeah.
sexy.
My goodness,
But yeah,
must be a
yeah,
very
yeah.
good pillow.
My parents were not very happy with that. I can tell you.
Yeah,
And mind you, back at that time, I had a mortgage, right? So I bought a
yeah,
house.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
just married, and both me and my wife actually quit our jobs in the same week. So I think
No way.
risk. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So risk taking is, I think, part of the journey, but not as a maniac, right? I mean, we
Yeah,
just
I would say
always.
it's the beginning of the journey. It's the
Yeah,
fire starter of the journey, but it doesn't keep the fire
yeah.
going. You know,
No, 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 no.
yeah,
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
It resonated with me strongly. Like when I quit my job two months ago, I start this AI business, Asia business. It feels exact the same. Like you know,
Yeah, and I think it will
but anyway, it's
always
not
be
about
like
me.
that.
Yeah,
It-
yeah,
no, no, no. But it will always be like that, and every entrepreneur will have that pivot point, right? Where it's like, oh man, like it's now quote unquote all or nothing.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's an interesting journey, man.
So you mentioned about I think the tools and then the transition from doing some low tech stuff. I was actually listening to Lex Freeman's podcast with Peter Pills,
Mm,
one of the most famous indie hacking developers. I think he's running 40 startups, each of his and all by himself, like a digital nomad, travel around Thailand, Indonesia, Brazil, and this feeling of being alone, but also wake up with a lot of anticipation of doing things, I think kept him going. I think the beginning has always been difficult because you, at the time, like in 10, 20 years ago, there isn't that many of digital nomad, probably similar to what when you started back in 2009.
yeah,
So
for
that
sure.
loneliness, that anxiety, is not something that people could see. What we see right now is like you're running very successful business, managing 600 workers on your platform. But make no mistake, the beginning of a journey is never been this rosy. And
No, no,
I
no. But the
mean,
whole
do
journey
you
is not
do
that
you?
rosy, actually.
Yeah, yeah,
it's,
yeah.
it's, al- it's always tough, man.
But in times now, it's definitely a good time to start a startup and being very efficient because use of these AIs and stuff. But
Yeah, 100%.
that probably create a nice segue to Workmate.
Mm.
So Workmate, if I'm after doing my research, the primary user of Workmate are the blue collar workers who I assume don't necessarily have the skill in AI, in programming, all that.
Mm.
What's the
Yeah.
vision? Like, tell me, what is the business problem that Workmate is trying to solve here?
Yeah, look. I think as entrepreneurs, you always try to find areas where you see there's a lot of fragmentation, there's a lot of offline uh, transactions, and try to think of ways on how technology can make that market more efficient. Right.
Hmm.
When we looked at the blue collar workforce in general, I mean, Southeast Asia alone, there's around 200 billion or so being paid in blue collar workers' salary in Southeast Asia alone.
A year.
So we looked at, yeah, a year. But again, blue collar, the definition is broad, right? We're going from construction workers to hotel cleaners or housekeepers and parking lot to even like informal workers like farmers, for example. So it's a very broad concept. But what we saw is more that this market is very much underserved, right? They're really quote unquote at the bottom of the labor force pyramid, and the world we live in right now offers platforms or offers technology that could actually help with upward mobility, right, for these workers, give them access to way more jobs, and actually make this whole process of finding work way more efficient for this part of the labor force. So we were thinking of ways like how could we serve this market as how could we serve this market? Actually, that was kind of the pain point,
Mm.
right? Initially, it started off as kind of like a job board type of platform, but we moved into way more a kind of what you said in the beginning, an Uber for staffing type of platform, where actually there's two users. One is the worker itself, because the worker is looking for a job, and is now, if we look pre-technology, he or she is dependent on a friend of a friend who maybe works in a factory, or a friend of a friend who works in a restaurant, and they need maybe kitchen crew, they need dishwashers, or they need housekeepers, and that's kind of like how they get a job. And on the other side, there are the, let's say, hotels or restaurants that are looking for workers. They go old school, right? They'll ask, "Hey, Leo, do you have some friends that could also work here?" Or they put some ads on Facebook or through WhatsApp. So it's very scattered. And we thought about like how could technology actually enable a way more efficient ecosystem where these workers on with one click on a button can apply to jobs that suit their skills, that match their skills. And once they actually start with that job, the entire working flow of this worker will be all tracked into one system. So that's kind of like how we started. And currently, yeah, we have over 500,000 workers on our platform, and we do that. We serve different type of customers, but our main verticals that we serve are warehousing logistic clients. So think of all the big warehouses that are processing e-commerce packages.
Mm.
Hospitality, think of hotels, F&B, restaurants, manufacturing, and retail. Kind of like those are kind of like the main buckets that we serve. And again, we're here our main client, our main users, of course, this worker, right, the blue collar worker, to give them an app so they can find jobs
Yeah.
easily. But at the same time, we also try to make the lives of our clients, our B2B clients, the companies,
Yeah.
easier, because they just need to post one job on our platform, and
Sure.
the workers will be funneled in line
Yeah.
with what the clients want, and everything takes place in one platform. So there's no more need
Who
for other type of channels.
is the worker paying for the app?
No, no, no,
Like
no, no, no. The
like
worker
a
doesn't pay
passenger
anything.
on Uber? No. Okay.
No,
It's
no,
the
no. The
client.
worker doesn't pay anything. It's the client. We charge the client. So we charge the client because all these workers are on our platform, so
Yeah.
they're part of our ecosystem. But
Right.
then we also process the payroll, right? So we usually
Right.
charge a fee on top of that.
Got it. Got it. So it connects the worker and the need of worker, like employers, and it
Correct.
does all the value add service once they're connected, like payroll.
Correct.
Yeah.
And exactly that's where we also try to add value, especially in today's world where AI, or at least predictive data, can
Yeah.
help clients connect with the right workers, right? And also
Yeah.
connect workers with the right clients. So I think this
Yeah.
is really the cross point where we try to enable clients and workers to just to have better experience when it comes down to looking for the right workers or looking for the
Mm.
right job.
What would you say the biggest pain point from the employer point of view? Is that about finding the workers or finding a more cost-effective workers? What is the key pain
Yeah, no,
point?
I think finding quality workers, I think, is always a big challenge. These it's easy to find workers in general, but a lot
Mm.
of the clients we talk to, their churn is really high. So they'll
Ah,
find a worker, they'll say like, "Oh, it's easy to find a worker," but then after 2 3 days, they
yeah,
churn or it doesn't work out and need to look for again. So you can imagine the number of
I see.
the money that it costs to train workers, or the time that it costs to train workers, and eventually to look for another one. It's a very inefficient market.
Yeah,
So that's what we're trying to solve now with
yeah.
Workmate.
Okay. So I suppose the system will provide a level of scoring about,
Yeah,
I guess, the skill and
exactly.
the quality of the worker. and
Exactly,
and
exactly.
make that
Yeah.
match and recommendation.
Yes, exactly. So I think now, I think we discussed this also previously, but I think now like we have a data science team, right, where that's primarily focused on just extracting insights from the data of the worker, right?
Mm,
But we want to, of course, extend that towards much more AI and predictive tools so that we can really match the right worker with the right job. And I think the big challenge for clients, for companies, is really regarding quality workers for that
yeah.
specific job. And I would truly believe that we're on the way to come to a solution where we can really predict the
Mm,
suitability of workers for a specific job based on their working data, based
yeah.
on their own data, right? To match the right job with the right worker.
How do you keep post at the working performance data? I assume these guys, if they're doing stuff in the warehouse or maybe, washing dishes in the restaurant, there's no way you're gonna get any performance data from these type of workers. So how do
Correct.
you
Correct.
sort of
Correct.
getting
Correct.
that data points?
Yeah, correct. So we need to go back to the basics, right? So
Mm,
what's the first data point for a worker to be able to say, oh, this is a good worker, yes or no? I think it's just this person showing up, right?
mm.
This
Yeah,
person actually working the timesheets that he or she needs to work.
yeah.
And then there's an option for supervisors. Let's say I am the supervisor and Leo is the dishwasher. There's an
Mm,
option for me as a supervisor to rate Leo. So I can give
mm,
Leo a thumbs
mm.
up or a thumbs down, or I can
Yeah,
give Leo 4 or 5 stars. So
right.
think of it as a Grab or Uber, or in our case,
Yeah, got
Gojek
it,
type of
got it.
environment.
Mm-mm.
That's where we need to move, right? And I think that's what I'm saying is also like this data is keeps on evolving, right?
Yeah.
The data keeps on evolving, the data that we can get from the workers, from their working experience. And by doing so, our predictive power also increases. So I think this is what I meant
Mm.
with, I think our data science will eventually evolve into way more AI type of tools so that we can become more predictive as the more data we gather.
Interesting,
And
interesting.
those are actually very good data points, by the way. Even
Mm-mm-mm.
now, like one of
Mm-mm.
the data points we use now is the location of the worker, where he or she lives,
Yeah.
versus the location of work. So let's say the
Oh,
restaurant is maybe 10 kilometers further
yeah.
than the place where the worker lives. Like this
Uh-huh.
is actually already a good indicator of if this person's going to show up, yes or no. You know what I mean?
Ah,
So
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so
Okay.
all these small things we
Yeah.
gather into our magic box of data, and
Mm.
based on that, we're now again purely based on data science right now, but we're
Mm.
evolving more into predictive tools so we can
Yeah.
really match the right worker with the right job.
How much of demographic data matters to the performance? Is there any correlation,
uh,
age?
100%. Whether you want it or not, I mean, the younger the workers, the more flaky they become, right?
Yeah.
Because we see that the older they are, they have more responsibility. They're more in a
True.
demographic of they're married or they have children. So there's more accountability there. Of course, location is very important. What I mentioned before, the
Yeah.
number of days work that they have in the platform is important, because the more days someone has worked in our platform,
Yeah.
his or her credibility increases. So there's a lot of data points that we're actually using already
True.
to match actually the
Yeah.
right jobs with the right workers.
And what about the industry specific data points? Like, I assume a certain point, certain type of data is only viable or accessible or matters to, for example, hospitality versus logistic, because they're doing things, the way the task itself. Do you see any variance of different type of data being captured and using for
Yeah.
analytics?
So I think as of today, it's pretty basic in a way that we look at if people show up on the first day, we look if they clock in, clock out accordingly,
Mm,
and we look at if supervisors are rating these workers. But for sure, what we see is there's a big difference, of course, between a housekeeper in a five-star hotel versus a pick and packer in a warehouse, right? So I think that finesse, that
mm,
specific info is also, these are data sets that we are evolving and we're building as we go. But there's
mm.
of course a difference in quality, in capabilities of a five-star hotel housekeeper versus a pick and packer. So these things are in process, but for sure there's different data sets that we need to be
Got
tracking,
it.
to be able to fulfill also the
Okay.
right worker.
What are the key countries that you're servicing right now?
So actually, as of now, it's we're still active in Thailand. Still have some in Singapore, but our main country is actually Indonesia. That's where we are right now, and that's where all focus is right now.
Yeah, Southeast Asia is probably one of the most non-homogeneous region. Like you have, Thailand, Singapore, Indonesia, Vietnam. Each country is
Yes,
different. Do
yes,
you see that in terms the worker behavior and how is that
hundred
managed?
percent. 100%, because one is a market where jokingly we sometimes say, look, in Thailand, for example, if there's a warm body and the heart is still beating, then he or she can do the job.
Okay.
But in Indonesia, there's a big workforce, right? I mean, only Indo, around 70, 75 million blue collar or informal workers. So it's a massive
Mm,
market. So then it becomes more a matter of how can we screen them better, right? So that's where
mm,
predictive analytics, that's where automation comes into play. Like, how could AI actually help with these routine tasks of, quote unquote, interviewing Leo or
mm,
onboarding Leo on our platform?
yeah.
And so there's still so much room to improve and so much room to get more efficient. But there's definitely different characteristics, different markets. There's high wage markets, there's low wage markets, there's worker supply, there's worker shortage, the worker
Mm,
oversupply versus worker shortage. So, and
mm,
as a platform, you need to tweak these different buttons to make
mm.
sure that we are localizing, because there's still different types of demand. And then I think that's also something, right? I mean, coming back to how we started, even with the pillows, fundamentally it's all the same, right? Fundamentally, we're still trying to create something for a specific market. We better understand the market, right? We better understand the needs of the users. We better
Yeah.
understand the differences in these different countries. And now with today's tools out there, it becomes definitely easier than 15 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of the tools, I assume you already have tools does the interviewing screening in terms of onboarding users.
Yeah,
I work
yeah,
without naming the names of the company. There's a lot of
yeah,
startup who doing interviewing, especially for the blue collar workers as
yeah,
well as
yeah,
office workers, and everything was done by AI. You basically
yeah,
be given a set of questions, you answer depends on how you interact with this.
yeah,
You
yeah.
get a score. Do you use that?
Yeah, so it's funny that you mentioned that, right? Because I think, especially, we talk about AI, we talk about technology in general. But the
Mm,
one thing that I've learned, right? You can never oversell something which is too far away from the reality. So, meaning, if I would come in now, and again, we're talking about blue collar workers, right? And
mm.
we come with some super hyper modern technology that's going to onboard them on our platform, it doesn't resonate. And this is also one of the lessons I've
Interesting.
learned. I mean,
Yeah.
you need to meet customers where they are. You need to meet them where they are. And then from there, you bring them where you want them to bring, right? Where you want to take them. So,
Uh,
what does that mean? That means actually that from the get go, it's not about overselling or overflowing them with hyper tech tools. No, you need to meet them where they are, give them
yeah.
something that they can understand. From there, you educate them to move them forward. You know what I mean? Even
Mm.
if you look at platforms like Gojek, the Uber of Indonesia, it wasn't like this, like, 10 plus years ago. You know what I mean? It evolved into the platform that it is now. But in the beginning, there was like a call center.
Mm, mm,
You
mm.
know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
that's also
Yeah.
the easiest way to get these workers on the platform, or these drivers
Yeah.
back then. And I think for us,
Yeah.
it's the same thing. So as of now, if you ask me, I won't mention all the tools, but we're also mixing like super traditional stuff, man.
Uh-huh.
We're also
Like
mixing
what? Pen
traditional
and
stuff.
paper.
That no, but we also call workers. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Actually
Okay.
call worker. We actually
To
also
get
call
them to
workers, and I
work.
think, well, to get them to
Get
work, or to
them
say, hey,
to get.
Leo, tomorrow there's a shift at 9. You got to be at location ABC. I mean, that sometimes needs to happen. You know what I
Are
mean?
you serious? Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Surely you
yeah,
can
yeah.
do that with AI, with your sexy voice.
Of course, of
Andrew's
course,
calling
of
you.
course, of course. Yeah, no, of course, of course. But I'm just saying in general. I think, like, I've been in Southeast Asia. I've been in Indonesia for the last 11 years.
Yeah.
And I've built businesses across the region. But the one thing that I've learned is that you cannot overflow or bring something which is too
Too much
sophisticated.
technology.
It's
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not going to work.
Yeah.
You
Over
need
the
to
top.
understand, right?
Yeah.
A lot of these workers, they get paid in an envelope with cash money in there after every shift.
Wow.
That's what they're used to. So then you
Okay.
need to imagine yourself, if that's what you're used to, should I then give them payment in a over the top way, or
Yeah. Yeah.
how could we make that into a smooth transition? So I think
Yeah.
that's finesse that you need to bring
Uh huh.
these workers also to the future, right?
What was the worst situation where you have to disperse?
The worst situation.
I don't know like how much or how many people you're dealing with, but give us some.
No, I mean we have some clients. There's literally 1,000 plus people that per month, right?
Uh
So
huh.
you can imagine what that brings along. We have clients also like in the far areas, right, of
Yeah.
Sumatra, for example, and
Yeah.
and these things require. It's not just about, oh, we just spend one campaign on Meta, or we use our new AI chatbot that's gonna create a worker pool in Sumatra. No, it's not
Mm-mm-mm.
gonna work like that. It's not
Mm.
gonna work like that.
Yeah.
You're talking in the rural areas. That means
Yeah.
we got to go there.
Yeah. Yeah.
That means literally we got to go there. We do
Uh-huh.
offline stuff. So that's also what I mean. Like the business that we're doing right now, I mean, yes, we're a tech company 100%, but the clients that we're serving are
Mm.
all offline, man. So that means that there needs to be a mix between
Mm.
offline stuff and
Yeah.
online stuff. And even the online stuff could not be so over the top, hyper tech, so that
Yeah.
the users don't even understand. You
Yeah.
need to meet them where they are. And
Yeah.
from there, you bring them to the future. And I
Yeah.
think that's always been something that I feel actually that has been the same. And that's especially true for us since
Yeah.
we work, our users are cash in hand, very
Yeah.
remote.
Yeah.
They find their job through their brother or through their neighbor,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
also like knowing your customer. It's
Yeah.
like it's always been important. It will always
Yeah.
be important.
Yeah.
The question is more
Yeah.
like, okay, how could AI actually make that profiling easier for you to cater your product better to your client?
I suppose it's always about connecting the digital and the physical world. I mean, that's where
Yeah,
tech companies
yeah,
excels because you have ability to solve the issues around information and help people to get connected or distribute
yeah.
information more evenly.
Mm,
But Southeast Asia, I think for a lot of people who look at Asia, especially people from the US, even for China, large country, homogeneous country, create a product work in one state equal to a work for the entire country. It's not the
yeah.
case in Southeast Asia.
No.
The
Yeah.
nuances between, like to your point, like the worker in Thailand, as long as it's warm, it works.
Yeah. They
Whereas
can work.
in
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Indonesia, not so much.
Yeah. It's different, and I think another example is Japan, for example, right?
Mm,
So as you mentioned in the beginning, like we got acquired 2 years ago in 2022
mm,
by Persol, which is the top three HR player in the world. And there's a similar platform what they have in Japan. And in Japan, it's really interesting because there, the standard level of a blue collar worker or an informal worker can be deployed in different industries. So meaning I could work there in a restaurant, and then maybe the week after I'm going to work in a retail store because the level is quote unquote is pretty high. And well, we're here, we see we need to do way more into collecting data of these workers and skill mapping. You know what I mean? Because here it's really like, let's say I'm a warehouse worker and I always am a pick and packer. I cannot be deployed in a retail shop because a retail
mm,
shop has different requirements. So
mm,
this is another point where I 100% believe that AI is going to help us when it comes down to skill mapping and clustering, right?
mm.
Using machine learning, for example. And this way, these workers can be put into specific boxes
Yeah,
where we can deploy them in the right job. And I think that's
yeah,
always the thing, right?
yeah,
You just need to localize. You need to localize your product to the market that you're in. And I think the example of Indonesia, Japan, Thailand is a very good one. Thailand, very high skilled informal worker, and it's also there's less workers there, right? So there's not a lot of choice for
yeah,
companies. Indo, a lot of workers. Companies have a lot of choice, so it really comes down to qualifications, skill mapping, clustering, and then
sure.
we have Thailand, also a shortage. They're very similar to
Yeah.
Japan, right?
It's so exciting because from my experience being a consultant most of my life, always attentive to customer needs and
Mm,
local nuances and what you built so
mm,
far and how you excel that. Just hearing all the data points you gathered either at the individual work level or micro level
mm.
across the region, you could build that service as a consulting or as a analytical service. You said that as like who would
100%.
know the better about the region in terms of
Yeah,
demographics, behavior data, buying data. Thailand, Indonesian, Vietnamese, and all that stuff. And there's huge
100%.
need for this kind of thing, especially speaking out of China. So I spent a bit of time, actually not a bit of, spent quite a lot of time working with a lot of outbound Chinese companies. And these companies are no longer the ones you know, like Huawei, Alibaba, Tencent, the giants. China is on its verge of transformation, not in the sense that we think it is top down. There are hundreds, if not thousands. My safe estimate is probably tens of thousands of companies are now venturing out of China. First country they will come to will be somewhere in Southeast Asia. So the choice
Yeah.
is always Hong Kong, Singapore, or Indonesia. It depends on where they're
Mm.
from, what industry they're serving. Obviously,
Mm.
if it's an e-commerce company looking for population, Indonesia being the largest populated country in Southeast Asia will be
Mm.
the first choice. B2B maybe to Singapore. But everyone have no clue. I've done a survey among I think 30 startups coming out of China. What is the key pain point for you
Mm.
to venture out?
Mm.
66% saying we have no clue how to do this. Like,
Mm.
who do you go to? Who do you ask if you want to build
Mm.
a business outside of China? My friend,
Yeah.
people who I know have done it. So there is no service or no
Yeah.
information, not enough information. I wouldn't say
Mm.
there's no information, there's plenty of information. But this comes to the point of, do you just take the information from the face value of what Google tells you? Or
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
information where I always believe this. I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of data, especially in this region, it sits
Uh,
offline. And
yeah.
then you can only
100%.
extract that from people like you guys who have
Yeah.
its hands and feet on the ground.
Yeah.
So for me, this is where the opportunity for Workmate, like all the information you gathered over the years is valuable. It just depends how you monetize it and service them.
100%, 100%. I think that's a good one because I was reading something more about like contextual understanding, right? And I think
Yeah,
how AI algorithms can understand the context,
yeah,
in which in my example, in our example, is like how the skills of workers, in specific industries, the salaries, the regions, et cetera, how AI can actually create that contextual understanding. I think that's where,
mm,
going back to your consulting example, I think there can be a lot of value for companies outside of Indonesia to
mm,
understand biggest labor force in Indonesia, right? So yeah,
yeah,
100% agree.
yeah.
100% agree.
Look at the future, but I always seeking for license, seeking for learning from the past.
Mm,
So I'm going to ask
mm,
a question that is probably brings you to the probably very low moment of workmate, and I'm just
yeah.
curious. During pandemic, between 2020 to 2022, nobody is allowed to go to work. And how was it
Yeah.
like for you guys?
Well,
How do you survive?
funny enough, in those years, we were actually flourishing
Really?
because,
How?
yeah, because online sales went crazy. No one went out. Can imagine warehouse and logistics was pumping like crazy. So those times
Oh,
we were actually on a rise. We were pumping like a machine. So
wow.
apart from not being able, us internally being with the team, that was difficult because everything was, working from home, which was new back then. But from a
Mm,
business standpoint, we actually had significant growth over those, let's say, 2 years, because of the pandemic, a lot of companies came to the conclusion where they said like, oh man, my payroll is so big, I have so many people on my payroll right now, but
mm,
my core functions are actually only 50% of them. So the level of understanding and realization that companies need to make their payroll as lean as possible actually helped us to build our business, because then they said, you know what,
mm.
our core functions, instead of 500
Shrink.
people, our core
Yeah,
functions are
yeah, yeah.
maybe only 200, and the rest I'm going to give it to a workforce as a service, like Workmate.
That's interesting. So it's similar
Yeah.
like a cloud. You provide an elastic service where you can
Yes.
go up and down.
Yes. 100%. 100%. And I think that's also the time we live in right now. Like
Yeah.
before, there's, I don't know, one tool that you're using and you need to pay $100 per month. But now it's like, okay, you pay per usage, right? It's very normal. And maybe if you only do 100 downloads a month, then it's going to be $100. If you do 1,000, it's going to be like $300. And I think that's what people want. People want that flexibility. People want to manage their cost more and better and get more insight in that. And that's where we can add value.
How much competition do you see in the region?
There are players in the market, right? So I think competition is good. I'm not here to say we don't need any competition, we're dominate. No, I think it's good to have competition, and I think the market is also big enough to have competition. I don't think that
Mm,
the blue collar workers or the informal workers is a one player dominating the whole market type of market. I really
mm,
think that the market is so huge that there a few players
mm.
could exist together. But of course, I hope that we'll be on top.
Well, okay. Well, and what would you think be that booster to help you to overtaking the competition?
Yeah, look, I truly believe that, and with me, I think my fellow, colleagues in the industry will believe the same. But I think how that AI will play a significant role in growth of the business is, I think everyone will agree with me. But I think it's how you're going to implement those tools, right, to serve the customers better. I think that's how we're going to do that. I think that's for everyone different, but I think that's where the difference is going to be made.
What's the biggest AI use case in your company?
Look, I think there's a few of them, right? But I would say
If it's
the
confidential, then
match.
don't mention it. I don't want you to reveal your competitive edge.
No, no, no. I think there's nothing confidential here. I mean,
Uh-huh.
but of course, like I think the matching part is I think where platforms like us can make the difference. So matching the right worker with the right job, I think that's number one. But also the moment that you and me on board as a worker, so we want to sign up, that whole process is, I think that's key, right? How, based on what type of data are we going to say, oh, Leo is a great warehouse worker, and he's an A+ guy, and Andrew, maybe he's a good housekeeper and he's
Mm,
suitable for 4-star hotels but not 5-star hotels. So I think
mm,
that onboarding process and qualifying workers is, I think, what's really going to make a difference. Because if you look at the clients, like their main problem is, maybe I can find a worker but I cannot find quality workers.
mm, mm,
And what everyone wants is want to have like a plug and play worker, a
mm,
plug and play Uber driver that will drive you from destination A to B, instead
mm,
of I'm going to go from A to C and then to B. So I think that, but that also takes time, right? Because the database needs to grow. I also believe that along the way, our service and our value add is actually increasing because of the number of workers on our platform, and because of the
yeah,
number of shifts that they're doing, and the
yeah,
number of job matching that we can do. Because
yeah.
of that, we actually become better and better along the way. So
Mm,
I think that's really, I think the matching algorithm, I think actually the biggest one.
okay,
I think two. I think the matching algorithm number one, and in line with that is more the predictive analysis,
right.
where AI can analyze the data, right, improve insights
Got it.
in the workforce.
What's the retention period? Like, how many years of data points do you have on average for a worker? Meaning, from the day one when a worker sign up for Workmate, which I
Mm.
suppose you start collecting data to a point where they are still
Yeah,
using it now. Like, I guess the company founded in 2015, so the longest
yeah,
period would be 7 years. But I guess in
yeah,
average,
yeah,
people. I mean,
yeah.
is the retention, the lifetime value, pretty high?
Assuming, of course, that these workers will remain like quote unquote gig workers, right, or short-term
Yeah.
workers, and they
Mm,
keep on using the platform, then the answer is yes, right?
mm,
But
mm,
it kind of depends. Of course, we also have workers that maybe they try it for a year, and then after that, maybe they go somewhere else and they're out of the platform. So it really depends. But yeah, theoretically, that is true what you said. If they started
yeah.
in 2015 and they're still on the platform, they're still doing jobs here and there, then yeah, then that would be 7, 8, 9 years. But the funny
Yeah.
thing is, like, even in the pandemic, there's been
Yeah.
many testimonials of workers where they said work, because not everyone is a Gojek driver, not everyone
Mm,
is a Grab driver, not everyone is an Uber driver. So what's
mm,
the other solution then to actually give me a work? There's been many testimonials of workers where they said Workmate has been their main channel of income.
mm,
And I
mm,
think those are, to me, the reasons why we do what we do, is because apart from this is like super amazing tech, blah 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 blah, like literally they say, because of Workmate, I've been able to provide for my family.
wow.
So if we can do this once, and we can do
That's
this
profound.
twice, we can do this 1,000 times, we can do this 100,000 times, then suddenly you can do this 1,000,000 times. That means that 1,000,000 families we could support, not only them in their job, we can support their
Mm,
families. So I see what we do way more as a building the nation type of thing, which maybe sounds very idealistic. But coming back to the labor force, right? If there's a pyramid and we're working on the bottom of the pyramid,
mm,
which is the base of the pyramid,
mm, mm,
and we can help them with upward mobility because they have more jobs, better jobs, more
mm.
insight into opportunities. And think about that, right? Once they're in, we can provide them with all types of services. Then you're helping these people go up in the pyramid.
Mm, mm.
So yeah,
That's
so that's
amazing.
kind of like, yeah, I mean, I can rant
I
about this
mean,
for
I can
hours,
see you
but
could run a
that's kind of
political
like,
campaign after Workmate because you
well,
just
yeah, I mean,
inspired me.
no, but yeah, but that's the big why, man. That's the big why. I
Yeah.
mean, I come from selling pillows, right? Selling pillows was like, I always said, like, I'm in the business of selling dreams. That's kind of like what I said.
You definitely selling dreams. Yeah, selling good dream, hopefully.
But now there's actual people, man. Like, even if it's one person, that's saying, hey, because of Workmate, I can actually provide for my family. Mind you, this is in the pandemic times, right? Where everyone is just afraid of not having a job or maybe not having a job. And then they say, because of Workmate, I've been able to support my family. Bro, that's steam ahead, right? Let's
It
go
touched my
hardcore
heart.
on
Yeah.
this. And that's what we do. We do.
Future aspiration. You are managing 600,000 plus.
Yeah.
What is your vision of getting to 1 million workers on your platform? How are you going to do that?
Yeah.
Do that?
Ah, man, I think yeah. I mean, that's where we need to go, right? It's very clear. But I think like, having 1 million workers on the platform is one thing, but having them in a job is another thing. So
True.
my and again, I've done e-commerce as well, and it was always about increasing our email database, our customer database. But to me, it's more like this, right? What could we do to get actually 1 million workers into a job, and not just into a job, but get them into a job that fits their skills? Meaning the companies that we work with are actually also happy with these clients, right? So if I envision that season in life where Workmate suddenly becomes the go-to app for these workers to find a good job, and because of AI we can really have a good matching algorithm, right? I think that's where the juice is, because then there's so much credibility and trust in the platform from a worker perspective, because he or she will say there's so many options out there, and the onboarding is so amazing, and I can get skilled in this platform, and there's upskilling, etc., etc. This platform adds value to my life, and then companies will say like, oh man, the quality of these workers on this platform is amazing. I think that's where we need to go, right? Because then as a company, you would say, without any doubt, you would say, I'm going to order this housekeeper because I know he or she comes from Workmate. I press on a button, 1 hour from now, he or she stands in front of the hotel. And I think that's where we need to go. And I'll give you a few examples actually for some warehouse clients. We were able to actually fulfill certain needs within 3 hours. If you look, what's the vision? I foresee, let's say within 3 years from now, uh, we will come into a situation where you, as a restaurant owner, you'll say like, oh, it's so busy in the restaurant right now, I need to have 2 more servers, that you actually order them, and within 20 minutes they're in front of your door. So that means speed, number one, but two, that the servers that come to your restaurant are actually high skilled servers, can do the job, get paid, and then they leave again. So that's the vision that I see. I believe we have still a long way to go, but I also believe that AI is going to play a crucial role in realizing that vision. But it's gonna happen.
Yeah, I'm sure you have a data scientist, or maybe your CTO has given you this idea.
Yeah,
I'm sitting here being in a former CTO at Huawei.
yeah,
The number one thing focus on is about data capturing. So I think the more data
yeah,
points that you have in the livelihood of a user on your platform, whatever it takes to incentivize them to put their data points in. To your point, review is given once in a
mm,
while, maybe
mm,
once a month, maybe once a
yeah,
job, who knows,
yeah.
right? But that's not enough. It's like,
No.
Airbnb 10 years ago. I think I was one of the biggest hosts on Airbnb. And I shut it
Oh,
down
really?
because it wasn't legal. And so, without revealing too much, but I got IRD chasing my back. I was like, is this
Okay,
your
yeah, yeah.
place? Whatever, right? So, and I realized, like at the time when Airbnb was first released, there's other platform. I think one was built in Asia, one built by German. So as a host, you distribute your property across all of them because it's about getting customers.
Yeah,
But then
yeah,
I realized it's actually not having the visibility most important to me. It's having that
mm,
review most important to me.
yeah,
And
yeah,
the more review I get, the more customers I get, and I can demand higher. But I can only
yeah,
get review if I get more people to stay with me, and so they can put
yeah,
into more data points. So I
yeah,
feel the same way. Like if you have a way to incentivize the worker either to check in more or get the
yeah,
employer to check in more, and
yeah,
create a loyalty and scoring system, this is as good as a resume. So resume
yeah,
for blue collar worker is coming from Workmate is
yeah.
beyond words. Yeah,
100%.
I
I
think.
think the data collection, I think for any tech company is always on the agenda, right? Data collection and analysis. And I so agree with you, right? Even coming back to the Airbnb example, So how do you get more bookings? You have better pictures, you play with the price, better service when they check in, better service when they check out, follow-up emails, follow-up messages, thank you for staying, blah, 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 give us a 5-star
Yeah.
review. But you need to be super intentional with that.
Yeah.
And then again, coming back again to meeting customers where they are, meeting users where they are. Yeah, sometimes that means, hey, Leo, you had a shift today at Andrew's pizza shop, please, or you had some workers in your pizza shop, make sure that you rate them, right? Maybe that's required to just to remind users, you know what I mean? So you got to go old school instead of just me pushing a push notification to you or sending an email. Sometimes you got to go old school, especially when it comes down to blue collar work.
All right, I'm going to shift the gear a little bit. Probably more talk about you and what you know for. You wrote a
Yeah.
book. It's called Ignite the Millennial Leadership.
Millennial leadership. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
In a way, when I see it, I sense two things. Number one, I sense there's a bit of lacking of leadership. There's a bit of things are missing in the millenniums. Secondly, I feel there is some really insightful stuff behind the book. Tell us, what do you see? What do you see in the millenniums that don't have, that push you to write the book?
Okay, so there's the context. Like, why did I write the book? Why did I write the book? Who do I think that I am that I can write a book, right? Well, number one, I don't think I'm anyone, but I just wanted to write a book because it was on my list. So there's this imposter syndrome, which I kind of like crushed. I'm like, whatever, I'm just going to write the book anyway. But I kind of shared just my personal insights, my personal lessons on scaling a business, like within 4 years from 0 people, like to 500, 600 people. And when you go through that, and there's such a young workforce, right, in our team, what do you see? So that's just the context around why I wrote this book. Got sold in like 4 countries, or it's being sold in 4 countries. And look, I think that millennials, look, now we're talking Gen Z, and my kids are proud to say that they're like Gen Alpha, and they come with words like bussin' and cap and low key, and it's all like a bit beyond my vocabulary, but specifically millennials. I think now the majority of leaders now are more millennials. I define them by year of birth is between 1980 and 2000. So I'm 1980, so still a borderline millennial. But I really feel that in the book I write a bit about what are Gen X type of leaders, which were more authoritarian, more like you do this because I'm the leader and I say that you need to do this. Where I feel that the millennials are way more triggered by intrinsic motivation because they want to follow a leader because he gives a certain vision, right? And then there's different aspects of, because if you're an entrepreneur, whether you like it or not, you need to become a leader. And whether you like it or not, you need to become very clear on your vision, because the moment that you need to hire people, they need to usually leave a nice cushioned job, like a nice job, for the unknown, right? Because you don't have anything. There's no track record. Yeah, you could say like, oh, I work for big companies, blah, blah, blah. Okay, but that's fine. But who's going to pay my salary, bro? Oh, that's you. Okay, with what? Oh, with this new business. Oh, so what is that? So it's a lot about storytelling, and it's a lot about vision projection, right? You need to bring people. And just like I said in the beginning, we need to meet customers where they are and then bring them to the future. I feel it's the same with as you're an entrepreneur, right? As you're an entrepreneur, you have nothing to give per se. there's this dream that you're trying to sell, and try to get workers, try to get your first employees on your story, and bring them with you. And look, in this book, I write about a few characteristics that I believe are crucial. And I think the inspirational part, which is the I for Ignite, is so important. It's not just being inspirational for your team, but also inspirational to investors, potential investors, to clients, to all your stakeholders, right? Where they believe like, okay, this guy or this girl, this is a leader, and this person knows where he or she is going. So, and then it's Ignite's actually an acronym, so every letter stands for something. But I think inspiration is really a big one that this generation, which is now in the workforce, mostly in leadership roles, needs to have to really push it to the next level. I mean, I won't give you a whole summary of the book, but
Right. Well, you should give a couple of lines that really get audience and viewers interested. I'm gonna put your book title right here, so I can click on.
yeah.
Hopefully, I can help you sell a few hundreds. Hopefully, sell them. Yeah,
Yeah.
Let's try that out. So, viewer, please do click on Andrew's book called "Ignite the Leadership in Millenniums." I surely think lots of kids needs them. Again, they're talking about people in China, which people are really lost. Lots of people sort of just don't see a point. I'm actually not just in China. I see that in Taiwan too. Like maybe just to share, for example, Taiwan was seen as one of the four dragons in the 80s,
Mm.
where
Mm.
you see the like of TCMC, HTC, all these guys, Honghai, they're still giants. So they built a lot of wells. Average worker at the time in 80s makes about 22,000 NT, which is probably 800, about 800 USD per month, I would say. It is, at the time, a lot of money. A comparison of a China salary at the time will probably be 10, 50 USD, as opposed to 800, so it's like 10x. 20, 30 years gone by, the salary of Taiwan is for grads is probably 28,000 NT. Hasn't improved much. Maybe now just passing $1,000 mark. And people feel like there's no point. We're not going to get a lot of money. The housing is getting very expensive. So I see similar things happening in China. People don't feel motivated because they see very little return. So they decided to go to the temple. They decided to go to travel to look for peace, to look for meanings in life. And don't get me wrong, I think there's a lot of value in life. We chose different paths, and I still believe. I mean, old school like you. So I born in 1979. So I learned the hardship. I learned work hard and not so much play hard. Work hard. You always work hard to get what you want and clap the letters. Take the bullet when you have to get out of the comfort zone and push, push, push. You push, you suffer, and you win eventually. But I definitely feel there's a lot lack of that in the millennials and the generation that comes after
100%.
that. So I think it's very meaningful to inspire these people, either from storytelling perspective or from other perspectives. So I would definitely check your book.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, please do.
and if I sort of aggregate all that into a few things about founders, being a founder who sold the business multiple times, being a founder who raised millions, and you also run a podcast, right?
Yeah, I do.
About
Yeah.
VC.
Yeah.
I would like to get a few tips, of your perspective. As a founder, how should you work with VC? As a founder, what should you watch out for when you're dealing with institutional VCs?
Ooh, it's a big question, man. I think for founders, there's a bit of a love-hate relationship with VCs, right? So that's why I always say to every entrepreneur out there, like if you're raising money, do that when you don't need the money, because then that's a whole different type of negotiation, right? If you're raising money because you need the money, then you always lose in negotiation, because that means you're always at the short end of the stick. So I think that's number
True.
one. So I would say build a business that doesn't need any VC is the best business. If you need to work with VCs, it sounds a bit corny, but look at the ones that can really add value and that are founders themselves. I think those are my most important things, because you need to really understand that VCs have a very different agenda than entrepreneurs. Their main agenda is to return the money to the LPs with a good return, which is not always in line with building a healthy business per se. So you come into this whole valuation game. So I think there's tension between the two. So you need to be very selective with VCs, right? But again, in this quote unquote tech winter, or where the market is a bit more defensive, just be careful, right? So I think that one, what I said as well, just build a business that doesn't need a VC, and that's we live in a good time where a lot of tools are free, or at least not too expensive. Get traction, understand what your client base, who your client base is, and understand what they want. And if there is really a path forward with a VC, then just choose the ones that are, I would say, that are ex-founders and that really understand what you're going through, because that's not always the case. VCs is a lot about financial modeling, right?
Yeah.
No. I'm not going to drop any names.
I tried.
No.
Sorry,
Sure.
founders. I've tried to get you a few names, but Andrew was not going to.
No, but I think for everyone it's different, right? No, for everyone it's different, and everyone will have a different click with people, right?
Yeah, fantastic. Look, thank you so much for sharing the journey with Workmate, what you guys building, and the aspiration of getting people into a job and serving to the millions. And the leadership in the millenniums is a key to our future. This tips to the founders, everything for all of us. We're all in this together. Thank you again. Yeah, so looking forward to hopefully once you reach a million, then come back and we.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah,
that would be really good. Yeah.
Cool.